Most men never realize when they're being emotionally manipulated by a woman. They think she's just being moody, just testing, or just expressing herself. But in reality, she's pulling strings to control the way you feel and react. Emotional manipulation isn't loud, it's subtle. It shows up in guilt trips, silent treatments, comparisons, and shifting blame until you're questioning yourself instead of her. And here's the dangerous part. If you don't recognize these tricks, you'll fall into them over and over, giving her more control while losing your confidence. A woman who respects you doesn't need to manipulate you. She values you directly. But a woman who uses manipulation is trying to get what she wants without earning it. That's why it's critical you learn to spot the signs, protect your frame, and never let her play games with your emotions. In this video, I'm going to expose the emotional manipulation tricks women use, how to recognize them instantly, and how to respond with calm strength so she loses power and you take yours back. Point 1. The guilt trip game. One of the most common emotional manipulation tricks women use is the guilt trip. This is when she flips the script and makes you feel bad for not doing exactly what she wants. Instead of asking directly, she'll twist the situation so you feel like the bad guy if you don't comply. You'll hear lines like, "If you really cared, you'd do this for me," or "I guess I'm just not important to you," or the classic, "Don't worry, I'll figure it out myself." On the surface, it sounds harmless, but the purpose is clear. She wants to control you by making you feel guilty. Here's the truth. Guilt trips are not love. They're leverage. A woman who genuinely values you doesn't need to use shame or guilt to get what she wants. She communicates openly, respects your boundaries, and works with you. But a manipulative woman uses your natural desire to please her as a weapon. She knows you don't want to hurt her, so she frames every refusal as proof that you don't care. Suddenly, you're bending over backward, not out of desire, but out of fear of being labeled the bad guy. The psychology behind this is simple. Guilt eats away at your self-image. If she can make you feel guilty enough, you'll start overcompensating, spending more money, giving more attention, sacrificing your own needs, just to make it up to her. And every time you fall for it, you reinforce the cycle. She learns that pushing the guilt button gets results, so she'll keep pressing it. Before long, you're not leading the relationship anymore. You're reacting, apologizing, and performing just to avoid conflict. Here's the mistake most men make. They defend themselves too much. They say, "That's not what I meant. Of course I care," and then prove it by caving in. But defending against guilt is still playing the game. The stronger move is to recognize it for what it is and refuse to play. When she says, "If you loved me, you'd do this," you calmly respond, "My love isn't measured by how quickly I give in. No anger, no guilt, just strength." That response shuts the door on manipulation. So remember this. Anytime she's trying to make you feel guilty for having boundaries, it's not love. It's control. The man who gives in to guilt loses respect. The man who stands firm earns it. Because a woman may test you with guilt, but deep down, she craves the man who won't fall for it. Point 2. The silent treatment trap. Another emotional manipulation trick women use is the silent treatment. This is when she deliberately withdraws communication, affection, or attention to punish you until you bend to her will. Instead of discussing the issue like an adult, she shuts down, ignoring your calls, leaving your texts on read, or giving you cold one-word answers. The goal? To make you so uncomfortable with the silence that you scramble to fix things, even if you didn't do anything wrong. Here's the truth. The silent treatment is not a communication tool. It's a control tactic. A woman who respects you will talk through issues, even if it's uncomfortable. But a manipulative woman uses silence as a weapon to make you chase her. She knows that most men hate the feeling of emotional distance, so she leverages it to get you running after her, apologizing and begging for her attention back. And the more you chase, the more power she gains. The psychology is simple. Silence creates anxiety. Your brain hates uncertainty, so when she withdraws, you start questioning yourself. Did I say something wrong? Did I upset her? What if she leaves me? That self-doubt eats at you until you eventually cave, giving her exactly what she wanted. And once you've rewarded her silence with extra effort, she learns that all she has to do is shut down and you'll dance to her tune. Most men fail this test because they panic when she goes quiet. They send 5 texts in a row, call multiple times, and write long apologies, even when they didn't do anything wrong. That desperation doesn't bring her closer. It makes her lose respect. The stronger move is to stay calm and refuse to play the game. If she wants to talk, you're open. If she chooses silence, you carry on with your life. You don't chase, you don't beg, you don't crumble. Your frame stays intact. So remember this. Silence isn't always peace. It can be manipulation. If she's using it to control you, the worst thing you can do is reward it. The man who panics during the silent treatment becomes her puppet. The man who stays composed forces her to realize that games don't work on him. And that's when she either communicates properly or fades away. Either way, you win. Point 3. The blame-shifting move. Another emotional manipulation trick women use is blame-shifting. This is when, no matter what happens, she twists the situation so you end up being the guilty one. Even when she's clearly at fault, she'll flip the script until you're the one apologizing. You'll hear things like, "I only acted that way because you made me," or, "If you had just done what I asked, this wouldn't have happened." Suddenly, her mistakes aren't about her choices. They're about your supposed failures. Here's the truth. Blame-shifting is manipulation in its purest form. A woman who respects you takes accountability for her actions. She admits when she's wrong. But a manipulative woman refuses responsibility because keeping you guilty keeps her in control. If you're always the problem, she's always the victim, and victims never have to change. Instead, they demand that you change while they stay comfortable in their behavior. Psychologically, blame-shifting works because men are naturally wired to protect, provide, and fix. When she blames you, your instinct is to smooth things over, to repair the relationship, to make it right. And in doing so, you absorb guilt that isn't even yours. Over time, this destroys your self-confidence. You begin to believe you really are the problem, when in reality, you're just trapped in her cycle of manipulation. Most men fall for this because they think keeping the peace is leadership. They think apologizing, even when they're not wrong, will calm things down. But every unnecessary apology is fuel for her manipulation. The stronger move is to call it out directly and calmly. If she tries to blame you for her actions, you hold your frame and respond with something like, "I take responsibility for what I do, not for your choices." No anger, no begging, just clarity. That one sentence flips the dynamic, because it shows you won't carry blame that isn't yours. So remember this, blame shifting isn't communication, it's control. A woman who never owns her mistakes but always finds a way to pin them on you is using emotional manipulation to weaken you. The man who accepts false blame becomes her doormat. The man who stands firm forces her to face reality. And respect never goes to the doormat. It goes to the man who refuses to bow under false guilt. Point 4. The comparison tactic. Another powerful emotional manipulation trick women use is comparison. This is when she constantly brings up other men, her ex, her friend's boyfriend, or even some random guy, to make you feel like you're not enough. She'll drop lines like, "He always surprises her," or My ex never complained when I asked for that. Or, why can't you be more like him? At first, it sounds like she's just making observations, but in reality, she's planting doubt in your mind. She wants you to feel insecure, so you'll start working harder to prove yourself. Here's the truth. Genuine attraction doesn't need comparison. A woman who values you doesn't measure you against other men. She admires you for who you are. But a manipulative woman uses comparisons to create pressure. She wants you to feel like you're constantly behind, constantly needing to do more to keep her happy. That pressure isn't designed to improve you. It's designed to control you. Psychologically, this tactic is dangerous because men are competitive by nature. The moment she compares you to someone else, your instinct is to rise up and prove you're better. You start overspending, overperforming, and overcompensating just to silence the comparison. But the harder you try, the more control she gains. Because now you're not living in your own frame, you're living in hers. You've accepted her narrative that you're not good enough, and you're working overtime to prove her wrong. That's weakness, and weakness kills attraction. The mistake most men make is reacting emotionally. They argue, defend themselves, or worse, attack the guy she mentioned. But that doesn't make you look strong. It makes you look threatened. The smarter move is to stay calm and unfazed. If she says, "Other guys do this," you smile and respond, "Good for them. I'm not other guys." That single line flips the script because it shows you're not competing for her approval. You are the standard. So remember this. Comparison is not a compliment, it's a weapon. The man who takes the bait becomes a performer in her game. The man who rejects the frame becomes the leader she respects. A woman may test you with comparisons, but if you stay grounded, you force her to see what's real. No man can be compared to you because you're not playing in their league. Point 5. The emotional roller coaster. Another manipulation trick women use is creating an emotional roller coaster. One moment, she's sweet, affectionate, and praising you. The next, she's distant, cold, or picking fights over nothing. This push and pull cycle isn't random, it's deliberate. The goal is to keep you chasing her approval, confused and off balance, never sure where you stand. When she gives you warmth, you feel relief. When she pulls it away, you panic and work harder to get her back. That's not love, that's control through inconsistency. Here's the truth. Consistency is the foundation of genuine attraction. A woman who values you doesn't play with your emotions like a yo-yo. She builds stability, not chaos. But a manipulative woman knows how powerful unpredictability can be. By constantly shifting between affection and rejection, she trains you to crave her attention like a drug. You never know when the next hit is coming, so you invest more and more effort trying to earn it. That cycle keeps her in power. Psychologically, this is called intermittent reinforcement, the same tactic used in casinos. When you don't know if you'll win, you keep playing harder. And that's exactly what happens when a woman pulls you into her roller coaster. The highs feel intoxicating, the lows feel crushing, and you start chasing stability that never comes. Instead of leading the relationship, you become addicted to her approval. Most men fall for this trap because they mistake the chaos for passion. They tell themselves, "She must really care. She's just emotional." When in reality, she's manipulating the rhythm to keep you hooked. The stronger move is to step back and see the pattern for what it is. If her affection is conditional on how much you chase, that's not attraction, that's a game. And the only way to win is not to play. So remember this. Real desire feels steady, not chaotic. If she's dragging you through highs and lows just to control your emotions, she's not building with you, she's breaking you down. The man who chases the roller coaster ends up drained. The man who refuses the ride keeps his power, his confidence, and his peace. And peace, more than anything, is the mark of a strong man. Point 6. The victim card. One of the most manipulative tricks a woman can use is playing the victim card. This is when she positions herself as the helpless one, the one who's always wronged, always mistreated, always in need of rescuing. At first, it might trigger your protective instincts. You want to comfort her, support her, and prove you're not like those other guys. But over time, you realize something. Every problem somehow becomes your responsibility to solve. Every issue gets twisted into your fault, and you're constantly carrying the weight of her emotions. Here's the truth. Genuine vulnerability is healthy. A woman who truly values you will share her struggles, but she'll also take responsibility for her life. A manipulative woman, on the other hand, uses victimhood as a shield. By always being the injured party, she avoids accountability. She turns every disagreement into a pity play, where you're left feeling guilty if you don't comfort her or fix everything. And once you accept that role, you become her emotional caretaker instead of her partner. Psychologically, the victim card is powerful because it taps into men's natural desire to protect and provide. If she cries enough, complains enough, or paints herself as fragile, you'll feel compelled to give in, just to make her feel better. But the more you give, the more she learns that weakness gets rewarded. She won't grow, she won't change, and she won't respect you. She'll just keep pulling the same trick whenever she wants control. Most men fail here because they confuse pity with love. They think being her savior will make her cherish them. But pity never builds attraction. It builds obligation. And obligation is the death of desire. The stronger move is to spot when she's using the victim card as manipulation. You can show empathy without becoming her crutch. You can listen without carrying her baggage. And most importantly, you can set boundaries by saying, "I'll support you, but I won't take responsibility for choices that aren't mine." So remember this. Real strength respects vulnerability, but never rewards manipulation. If she's always the victim, never the problem, and you're always the fixer, you're being played. The man who falls for it ends up drained. The man who sees through it protects his energy and earns her respect or exposes her truth. Either way, he wins. Point 7. The future promise. Hook. The final emotional manipulation trick women often use is dangling the future in front of you like a carrot on a stick. She paints big pictures of what could happen: vacations, living together, marriage, or some dreamy relationship, but never actually commits to anything in the present. You'll hear things like, "One day when things are different," or "I can totally see us together forever, but just not right now." On the surface, it feels hopeful, but in reality, it's a tactic to keep you invested today, while she avoids giving you clarity now. Here's the truth. Real attraction moves in the present. A woman who values you shows it in her actions, her effort, and her consistency right now. A manipulative woman, on the other hand, uses vague promises of someday to keep you hooked. She knows that as long as you believe in a future with her, you'll keep giving her your time, your energy, and your resources today. It's not commitment, it's bait. Psychologically, this works because humans are wired to chase hope. If you think something amazing is just around the corner, you'll endure almost anything to get there. That's why casinos thrive, and why manipulative relationships last longer than they should. You're not living in reality. You're living in the fantasy she dangled in front of you. And the longer you buy into it, the harder it is to walk away, because you've already invested too much hoping for that future to arrive. Most men fall into this trap because they confuse words with actions. They hear her say, "I see us together long term," and ignore the fact that she won't even invest short term. They think patience will pay off, but in reality, they're just delaying the inevitable. The stronger move is to separate fantasy from fact. Judge her not by what she says about the future, but by what she does in the present. If her actions don't align with her promises, she's not building with you, she's stringing you along. So remember this: future talk without present effort is manipulation. A woman who genuinely wants you doesn't need to sell you a dream, she shows you today. Don't waste your life waiting for someday. Respect yourself enough to demand clarity now. Because the man who falls for the promise gets drained, but the man who sees through it becomes untouchable. Conclusion. Now you know the 7 emotional manipulation tricks women use, and how dangerous they can be if you don't spot them. The guilt trip, the silent treatment, the blame shifting, the constant comparisons, the emotional roller coaster, the victim card, and the dangling of false future promises. Each of these tactics is designed to throw you off balance, make you doubt yourself, and push you into giving more while she invests less. On the surface, they might seem harmless, but over time, they erode your confidence, your boundaries, and your sense of control. Most men fall for these tricks because they confuse manipulation with love. They mistake guilt for care, chaos for passion, pity for intimacy, and empty promises for commitment. But once you see these patterns clearly, you can never unsee them. You realize that real attraction doesn't require tricks. It shows up through consistency, respect, and genuine effort. A woman who values you won't need to manipulate you. She'll meet you halfway. So remember this: the man who fails these tests gets drained. The man who passes them earns respect. Don't reward manipulation with compliance. Call it out, stand firm, and walk away if you must. Because the moment you refuse to play the game, you take your power back. And that's when you become truly untouchable.